living in Germany was a huge kind of like shock to me. Not in that German people are so much different than Americans or so strange from Americans. It was that it was very rare for people to have cars, especially in the cities, which is where most of my apartments were. They were really close to downtown areas. So very few people in the cities have cars. And if they do, they don't drive them very often because Germany has a fantastic transportation system. They have big trains that go from cities to cities and cross countries. They have the streetcars, the Bahns, that Straßenbahn, that travel along the roads. But those are also called U-Bahns. They go under the ground too. They also have tons of buses that run. It's a very, very organized system and a very user-friendly system. I think in Hanover, the Bahns ran like every 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, if I'm remembering correctly. It was a long time ago. And the buses were a little bit more iffy, especially the further out you'd go, away from the inner cities. So that was really nice because it meant that sisters didn't have to worry about updating their licenses. Because in Germany, your license is good for 6 months. The first 6 months you're there. And then if you want to continue driving afterwards, you have to go in and change and get a German license. But the nice thing about that is if you already have a license, you can just pay, I think when I was there, it was like 85 euro to get a German license. And then you can drive your whole mission. So some of the elders had to do that, more so than the sisters. But it also meant that we didn't have to have bikes, except I had 2 cities where we rode bikes because one of them was in Kiel, because we were not close to a train station, and the other one in Glückstadt because it was such a small town that they didn't even have the streetcars, the subways, and their bus system was very small. So that was interesting, riding in a skirt. I'll have more on that later. But so that was a unique experience for me because growing up in Virginia and then also being in Utah, I'd ridden buses a bit and tracks a bit in Utah when I've lived here. But in Virginia, growing up in Virginia, outside of a school bus, I'd never ridden a city bus. I'd never been on a train. So that was fun. The weather in Germany, it can get pretty humid. So summers are hot and winters are cold. The winter that I was there, so the winter of 2009 to 2010, was apparently record-breaking. It was the coldest winter they'd had in 50 years. And if any of my friends are watching this, they know that I don't really like the cold and I don't do well with the cold. So that was just a fun little twist to my mission. So lots of snow during the winter, especially up on the coastal cities like Bremen and Kiel. And lots of wonderful warm summers and thunderstorms. They had some pretty good thunderstorms. I served in 5 cities in the Hamburg mission. I started in Hanover. Then I went up to Bremen. I served there for 2 transfers. And then I went over to Kiel. I served there for 2 transfers and got to spend Christmas there. I'll talk more about that later. And then I served in a trio, in a Drit, in Glückstadt for just 1 transfer before I went down to Bielefeld and ended my mission there after 2 transfers. So every city that I was in at the time that I was in it was my favorite. there were so many unique things to experience in each city, either large or small. There were, even though the people were still all German, you know, they had their own dialects, or they had their own accents, or they had their own traditions. I mean, most of the traditions were about the same, but I mean, everyone has different family traditions and things like that. But it was nice to be able to see a wide variety of cities while I was there. A lot of times sister missionaries only get like 3, maybe 4 cities, and I got 5. So I felt pretty special. And I loved all of them for different reasons. I spent the longest time in Hanover, 4 transfers, which is 6 months. And I don't really know what to say about it. We worked a lot with young single adults there, the Yotaes. So they were part of our ward there in Hanover, but we did like enrichment activities with them. We taught the English class there, and we would do splits with them. We would try to use them as joint teachers, especially if we found people who were interested in the church who were around their age. So that was really fun. I probably worked with Yotaes the most in Hanover.